Hey guys! How are all of you beautiful people doing? I hope you all are having a great day. And yes, this is the next part of I Became Shikamaru Nara, where the world that once seemed fictional is now real. Shinobi, chakra. It's all so close. After being reborn in the body of a deceased child, the hero has a second chance to live this life anew. Having found a new home and clan, he will have a long and difficult journey. But the object that was found in the past and changed his fate is still with him. Now, with this power, he will follow the path of the strongest Shinobi. So without any delay, let's start the series. After stepping back 5 meters, the shadow finally froze, and Shikamaru gritted his teeth. He knew it wouldn't work, but he had to try. All that is enough for him is another such shadow, no more. You have to pay for a fast and long shadow, and of course you pay with chakra, but he didn't have much of it anyway. The Nara were generally not predisposed to even medium volumes. Even the best Chunnin of his clan had chakras just below average. In addition, getting out of the shadow with a good supply of chakra will not be a problem for someone caught in the shadow. Of course, Shikamaru is not the same as before. Now his shadow is quite capable of holding even his father for a whole minute, so he can definitely hold the girl. Just on special S-class ninjas or Kage, such tricks of course will not work. Even Shikamaru's father would not have worked that way if he hadn't allowed himself to be caught. Shadow techniques are such that they are not intended for combat, but only for capture by others. This is one of the reasons why the Nara became friends with the other two clans. But his case was different. Unlike typical representatives of the clan, he could well have done without clan techniques. It was just that in this battle there was nothing without them. In any case, Shikamaru now has only one opportunity to use the shadow grip. All that is worth hoping for is a surprise effect. Since it is impossible to use bones and the Sharingan, we can only hope for the girl to miss. Shikamaru was not naive. He did not even think of defeating her in a direct Taijutsu clash with Taijutsu. The girl has much more experience and skills. Okay, as I thought, we can't avoid a second collision. Hopefully it works. Exhaling, Shikamaru opened his arms, and then slowly began to untie the bandages. Avi, at that moment, looked in surprise at the disappearing shadow. Frankly, this is the first time I've seen such a strange shadow technique. If I were a little slower. Ha! Looking up, Evie furrowed her eyebrows. Shikamaru suddenly began to untie the bandages and she was surprised. What is he doing? Ino watched the battle of the two with gleam in her eyes. She even liked this slightly weird guy. Although he behaved a little rudely, Ino was even amused by this situation. It was not every day that she saw her strict sister so angry. As for Kage, well. The fat man was sitting next to the target and chewing on the chips that had come from nowhere. Watching his friends battle, the guy only occasionally nodded and muttered. Not bad, very good. When Shikamaru unwrapped the bandages, he threw several small weights to the ground with a rather loud sound in one light movement. Avi widened her eyes in surprise. This is indeed. But Shikamaru did not stop there. He began to untie his legs and pulled out a few more weights. These weights alone carried almost as much weight as Shikamaru himself weighed. Having got rid of them, it was easy to guess that he certainly added in maneuverability. Unbuttoning his shirt, the guy threw it aside and stood in a rack. Observing from a distance, Ave furrowed her eyebrows. Is this the body of a child? What is he doing in his training? The girl walked a glance over Shikamaru's body and stood in a rack. Now she began to take him more seriously. She might be stronger now, but Avi wasn't sure how long it would last. Exercising 6-year-olds were not uncommon, but often they lacked either good motivation, or talent, and the main quality inherent in adults, endurance. As you can see, Shikamaru had enough of everything. This guy, he's just like those crazy taijutsu masters. Shikamaru's body was covered with a lot of relief muscles. Due to proper nutrition and constant training, he definitely did not look like a 6-year-old child, except that he lacked growth. But his body, especially without clothes, was really impressive. Especially his forearms and fingers, almost every muscle was visible to the naked eye. There were bruises and blisters on his fists that went down to the elbows. As the guy undressed, Kji shook his head from the side. "Show off." As for Ino, she only muttered in surprise. Well, Avi. ****. Shikamaru instantly made his move, noticing the slight confusion on the blonde's face. Anyway, she was still a young girl, even if Shikamaru was just a child. Throwing a smoke bomb at his feet, he flew out of the smoke screen to the side in a second. As soon as Avi moved away from a slight stupor, the guy's leg was flying straight into her head. Shikamaru did not hesitate, he was ruthless. Damn, this brat, clenching his teeth, all Avi had to do was block the punch with his hands. Shikamaru was just expecting this. With a hard smile, the guy directed chakra into calcium and strengthened his leg with all possible power. Boom. A strong blow fell directly on the fragile hands of the girl, but oddly enough she withstood flying a couple of meters to the side. Shikamaru seized the moment and attacked again. But Avi was already ready. Shaking her slightly numb hands, the girl struck a quick kick to the quickly arrived Shikamaru. But to the girl's surprise, he was still able to dodge this quick attack, though not without consequences. As soon as Shikamaru dodged to the side, Avi instantly overtook him in the air. Shit! With a mental curse, Shikamaru suddenly began throwing kunai around. Easily dodging several of them, Avi quickly caught up with Shikamaru. But during this time, he managed to throw out at least a dozen of them. After exchanging a couple of blows, Shikamaru could no longer keep track of her speed and was sent on a long flight. But as soon as the blow hit the guy directly, his body suddenly disappeared with a pop. Having already landed on the ground, Evie suddenly felt a chill on her back and she turned sharply, but at that very moment one of the thrown kunai with a clap changed shape and in the same second a long and incredibly fast shadow escaped from the cloud of smoke. Just a moment and Evie was almost caught, but the girl had enough reaction, and she immediately understood what Shikamaru was up to, so she managed to walk away. Unfortunately for her. As soon as Evie took a few steps, she immediately looked down with shock and swore. Heck! Boom. The thread was severed and an explosion followed. The girl could not even imagine that several abandoned kunai would be tied with a thread and, in fact, would be a stretch that activates an explosive seal. Evie was quick enough to walk away, but she immediately realized that it was a mistake. As soon as the first explosion thundered, everyone else followed. All the kunai were special and connected. Shikamaru unclenched his other hand and removed the seal of the snake. Quickly slipping it into his pocket, he took out a small ball and quickly threw it at his feet. Impenetrable smoke spread with a strong pop. This was exactly what he needed. Since he could not show his eyes, then they simply should not be seen. Evie shouldn't have suffered much. These explosive seals were of weak power. Plus, Shikamaru threw them in a specific sequence. If the girl was not stupid, she would move to a safe area in the center. And she had no options, except that she could go underground or use technology. In this situation, Shikamaru already could not do anything. All he could do now was to act according to the plan. Long training in throwing kunai was worth it. Unfortunately, it is simply impossible for the average person to use the shadow in this position. Everyone in the Nara clan relied on their eyes to take over. Although there was sensory contact with the shadow, it could not help in determining the goal. Shikamaru could rely on intuition, but speed was important now. The target must be in sight, otherwise nothing will work. But for the owner of the Sharingan, everything changed. *ZZZN**. As soon as the bloody eyes flashed, Shikamaru instantly detected the movement of the girl's chakra. This was already enough to act on his own. The final touch in this difficult battle was a fast and lightning-fast shadow. Avi could not even imagine that in a completely invisible environment Shikamaru would easily catch her. As soon as the dust cleared, the situation finally cleared up. The smoke around Shikamaru also slept, and his eyes returned to normal. Avi stood in the center of the landfill covered in dust and with a displeased face. A long black shadow stretched across the ground straight from her towards Shikamaru. The satisfied guy met this evil look and grinned. "I won." Avi snorted. "Rogue. Maybe, but..." Shikamaru took a few steps towards the girl, and she immediately mirrored them. Avi had anger written right on her face, lightning almost flashed in her bright blue eyes and a flame of hatred burned. Just think of losing not even to Chunnin, in such a collision. When the two closed the distance and stood 1 meter apart, Shikamaru said, "In the life of a shinobi there is no such thing as a swindler, you just lost, admit it." "I'm not yet." ****. Shikamaru put a kunai to the girl's throat, and she, in turn, put her free hand to his throat. It wasn't hard to see who was in the worst position. Noticing the blonde's nervous gaze, Shikamaru chuckled. "It's a pity you didn't bring your kunai with you, right?" Glancing around the girl, Shikamaru continued. "Of course, it's even better, these clothes suit you. You are very beautiful, you know." Avi looked at Shikamaru oddly and blushed slightly. "What are you talking about? I lost already, scatter the technique and let me shake off." The guy smiled a little and dispelled the jutsu. Once again meeting Avi's gaze, Shikamaru's mood lifted even more, after which he turned around. "Sorry, I didn't want to offend you, but just wanted to win." Returning to his clothes, the guy dusted off his shirt and threw it over his body. "I only have a couple of months to go to the academy. Not more than a couple of hours a day, right?" After brushing all the dust off her clothes, Avi looked at Shikamaru again, but then quickly looked away and nodded. "Okay. Get dressed already." Noticing the girl's unusual reaction, the guy did not miss the opportunity. "Huh? What? I'm only 6 years old, don't forget, did my baby body seem to be?" Before Shikamaru finished speaking, a piece of mud flew into his head. ****. "Oh, you." Shikamaru, barely having time to dodge, rubbed his head and snorted, "It could have been easier." "I won't go with you." Avi chuckled and walked quickly towards Ino. The girl at that moment looked at Shikamaru in surprise. She could not believe that this guy, the same age with her, was still able to defeat her sister. She could not even think that this was possible. For a little girl, it was something incredible. When Avi returned, Ino immediately asked, "Big sister, why did you lose?" Out of the corner of her eye, Avi saw Shikamaru wrapping the bandages and answered through her teeth. "He was lucky. If I had used ninjutsu, he would have been lying in the mud. Oh, why didn't you use them? I just didn't want to get my hands dirty. Let's go, I don't want to linger here. The girl looked towards Shikamaru and Kji, who came up to him. But you still need to train, and as for these two. Glancing displeasedly at the two guys, Avi seriously said to her sister. You shouldn't be friends with them, they won't teach you anything useful, especially this one. Just then, Shikamaru turned around and waved his hand with a cheerful smile. Avi snorted and turned around. Come on, I know a better place. As soon as they were ready to leave, a loud voice was heard. Hey, blonde. Avi stopped and asked without turning. What else? The two guys walked up quickly and Shikamaru said. It's about our deal. We haven't discussed how it will go. You agreed for 2 months, but what about your missions and in general, where will we meet? Avi finally turned around and answered coldly. I do not have missions yet. If they appear, then the time spent on them does not count, but we can meet right here, in the evening. Will it suit you? We'll arrange. Without another word, Avi briskly left the range. Ino turned to the guys and waved goodbye and immediately caught up with her sister. Kji looked at Shikamaru and said. It looks like you're not going to say hello in these trainings. I don't think she really likes you. But I like her, so who cares? Yes, brother. I guess. Shikamaru smiled and patted his friend on the shoulder. Calm down, I'm not going to marry her, it's just sparring. The harder she is with me, the better for me, isn't it? Aha. With a slight nod, Kji said, just be careful. Ha ha, brother, but she is a girl, what could be dangerous? Well, I hope you're right. Shikamaru smiled and waved his hand. Come on, shurikens will not learn to throw themselves. Returning back to the academy class, Shikamaru looked away from Ino and smiled. Kji was right about something, she was really rude. Since that time, Shikamaru has done dozens of training sessions with Avi and the deadline for their contract is coming up very soon. Of course, the guy already had some thoughts on this. As for Ino, the guy often crossed paths with her. She even sometimes came to training with her sister, so the guys often trained as four. Although, Ino trained with Kji, and Shikamaru trained with Avi. Yet the levels of the guys were different. Shikamaru looked at his friend and nodded. Yet he is much stronger than himself in the original. Probably the pill also showed its effects. The guy is certainly not Chunnin, but also not a weak student of the academy. I think in a couple of years he may even be able to graduate. Maybe even earlier. As for Ino, I still have time to work with her. So soon I will have more problems. Sitting calmly and thinking about the situation, the guy suddenly felt someone's gaze and immediately turned to the observer. Meeting Naruto's eyes, Shikamaru smiled slightly and nodded. The blonde frowned, but nodded back. Not that Naruto was somehow angry with Shikamaru, rather, these two were also connected by some story. Anyway, now was not the time for that. Shikamaru was currently planning to quickly finish everything at the academy and start pumping. At the academy, Shikamaru did not stay long. The lessons were supposed to start the next day, so the guy was finally free. Iruka-sensei listed all the students, including Shikamaru, and then explained some of the rules of conduct at the academy. All this took no more than an hour and was rather tiring. After everyone left the academy, Shikamaru and Kji stopped in the shade of a nearby tree. Sitting down next to a tree, the fat man sighed with relief. It's finally over. I thought he would not finish with his rules. Shikamaru settled down next to him and chuckled. This is his job, he is an instructor. Yeah, I hope it won't always be so boring. With a sigh, Kji turned to his friend. Okay, now what? Shikamaru shrugged. I don't know, training probably. What else can we do? Again. Shall we go for some ramen or meat at the barbecue? All my legs ache after yesterday. You go. Shikamaru smiled a little. I have some business to finish, I won't be here tonight either. What are you up to? You usually don't miss training with her. Shikamaru waved his hand. It doesn't matter. If he asks where I am, then just say that we have only a week left. Then she finally gets rid of me. Okay. With a sigh, Kji asked, by the way, how did it go with the director? Well, quite good. Now I can leave the academy at any time. One might say, became a genin. I think you can even count on assignments. I didn't doubt you. Only I don't understand why you decided to stay. Didn't you want to become a ninja as early as possible? Shikamaru chuckled. I've already become one, and if you're talking about assignments, then they are not interesting to me yet. I already said, until we are at least 12, it is worth postponing leaving the village. Okay, I get it. You keep saying that we should wait, but you never said the reason. It's a little unpleasant. You don't trust me. It's funny to hear that from a 6-year-old child. Laughing inwardly, Shikamaru slapped his friend on the shoulder. I have already told you about my powers, isn't that enough for trust? Kji sighed and nodded. Yes, but it just always seems to me that you are acting too adult. Even I, looking at myself in the past, am surprised at everything. You were exactly the same 2 years ago. Shikamaru nodded. You're right, I myself do not know why this is so. After the incident when I got sick, everything changed. My vision of everything, a little, has changed. This was probably the only excuse Shikamaru could use. And he simply could not tell him a lot about himself. He even decided not to talk about the Sharingan for now, since nothing will change from this information, and it can only get worse. Unless Kji knew about Shokotsumiyaku. Still, Shikamaru had to say something to his close friend. Of course, what Akimichi was good at was that he didn't ask questions often. He was mostly used to listening to his friend in everything, so Shikamaru found it much easier with him. Plus, Kji quickly grew wiser, which was an added plus. Although his laziness and gluttony still remained. After his friend's words, Akimichi sighed a little. I see. Well, if you don't want to go, it's up to you. It's just that Ino will be upset if you don't come. At that, Shikamaru could only smile. Well, tell her I have to finish my special training, and when I get back, I will give her a present. The situation with Ino was quite funny. Shikamaru, of course, noticed that Ino often looked at him and behaved strangely. But they did not see each other very often, at least less often than with CHG. In addition, Ino was a child and it could hardly still be called falling in love. Shikamaru didn't even want to think about it, he felt too strange about it. But the fact that Ino was interested in him was very clear. Especially in the last month. This girl has become more courageous, and generally does not miss the opportunity to meet with him. So it's amazing why she didn't show up now while the guys were chatting. Okay, I'll tell you. By the way, I noticed this Naruto size, it looks like he doesn't really like you. Shikamaru chuckled wryly and nodded. Indeed, our last meeting turned out to be unpleasant for him, although I don't think that he doesn't like me, rather he is just serious about winning. Last time I was pretty tough with him, and we made some bet. Ho ho, bet. Kji's eyes sparkled. What kind of bet? Yes, nothing special, I told him something important, but I hid some of the information. Then, I demonstrated his weakness and pressed a little. In general, I will not say that he was satisfied. But he decided to fulfill one of my conditions in order to get all the information. This is something very important, but worth it. So what's the deal? What should he do? Shikamaru shrugged. Just to become stronger, I gave him the same task as you. If he can climb a tree with the help of the chakra, then I will immediately tell him everything. Kji asked with a grin. And why do you need it? I remember you said that this guy was special, but you didn't specify why. Is this the case? Shikamaru nodded briefly. Indeed, the guy may not look very strong, but this is for now. Remember that Baiju, a book I made you read. Ah. Kji grimaced. Of course I remember, how you can forget this. Akimichi's gaze suddenly cleared up and he said in surprise, wait, you don't mean to say that this guy? Exactly, Shikamaru nodded. And this is just his first feature, don't forget about Uzumaki's blood. He does not bear this name for a simple reason. Yeah, you said they were famous for their vitality and fuin seals. The guy has good genes. Yes, he will also make a good ally. This deal will add motivation to him, and he will master the standard genin exercise, which will be very useful to him. Well, then he will help me again. Will it help? Yes, Shikamaru smiled enigmatically. You remember our walk to the Uzumaki area, right? Ah. Yes. Kji nodded. There was that strange barrier. Right. If I studied everything correctly, then this barrier is tied to the blood of Uzumaki. Of course, I'm also sure that it can be opened without it. It's just that my knowledge in this section of Jutsu is zero. So if we can't crack it, we'll just find the key. It is quite possible that the boy will do. Kji smiled broadly and said. Good plan, just. What? The fat man scratched his head and asked. Hasn't anyone already penetrated this barrier? Do you think there is something valuable left? Shikamaru smiled slightly. Here you are right, with the skills of the old man the third to penetrate this barrier would be easier than ever. But, Uzumaki are not so simple, who knows what could have remained there. Shikamaru was of course referring to things like the Death God mask or something similar. It is possible that something like this is left there. So he could not miss this possible. Even getting a mask would be quite nice. Shikamaru walked away from the tree and waved his hand. Okay, I'll go, soon it's evening, I should hurry. Yeah. Happen. The place where Shikamaru was going to go was quite far from the ninja academy. This time, he chose not the forest of the Nara clan, but the outskirts of the village, a grove just outside the Uzumaki quarter. After studying the barrier, he noticed that there are no people in this forest at all. So it was the perfect place for a secret base or for special training with the Sharingan and Shikatsu-myaku. So lately, if there is a free minute, Shikamaru goes there and trains the technique of throwing shuriken and tries to give time for his eyes to get used to. Shurikens and kunai, along with threads, were generally interesting to him, so he tried to train with them as often as possible. And with the Sharingan it was very exciting. It would be his will and Shikamaru would always walk with an activated Sharingan. Of course, this would hardly work due to the small amount of chakra, but a few hours a day would be a good exercise for the eyes. It's a pity that now it was impossible. In any case, Shikamaru did not go to the outskirts of the village to train, but to take new pills and bloodlines. Maybe even pedigrees. He hasn't quite decided how the situation will turn out yet. Learning a new bloodline will be a very unpleasant process. He was already convinced of this when he received the Kaguya bloodline and the Uchiha bloodline. After that, he even received a weaker one, in Inuzuka, as a reward for completing the quest. But this pedigree was very painful to assimilate, even if it was very weak. Fortunately not so much as Shikatsumiyaku, nothing can compare with that horror. From all this pain and the whole process, the shadow clone will probably be dispelled, so that the restaurant will temporarily be in the hands of an ordinary chef. Fortunately, he was not bad. Shikamaru trusted him in terms of cooking. The restaurant had 2 chefs, his clone and one middle-aged man. Shikamaru planned to hire one more, as well as a couple of waiters, but he decided to postpone this for now. Problems with supplies from the Land of Fire are sometimes problematic due to robbers. It was worth solving this first. Having quickly reached the Uzumaki quarter, Shikamaru looked around and after passing several houses went out in the direction of the forest. Part of the territory was under the barrier, but if you walk around it correctly, you can go into the thicket of the forest. Finding the right place, Shikamaru made himself comfortable between the 2 trees and finally said, "Status." At that very second, a window appeared in front of the guy's eyes. Shikamaru hasn't given much time to him lately. All he did was take mission rewards and that's it. Name, Shikamaru Nara. Age, 5 years old. Faction, Nara Clan, Hidden Leaf Village. Ninja rank, Chunnin. Strength, 95, Stamina, 112, Speed, 92. Talent, 165, Chakra size, 545, Chakra control, 70. Pedigree. Nara, Strength 425%, Improved Mastery of the Element Yin, 85%. Improved Genome, absent. Kaguya, 50% Strength, Unique Body plus 5 to Indicators, Strength, Endurance and Speed. Improved Genome, Shikatsumiyaku. Evolution, absent. Uchiha, Strength 50%, Improved Mastery of the Element Fire, 10%. Improved Genome, Sharingan, second stage equals 2 to Mo. Inuzuka, 50% Strength, Upgrades of all senses plus 5 Speed. Improved Genome, absent. Elements. Wind release 3%. Earth release 36%. Fire release 27%. Yin release 115%. Yang release 15%. Technique. Ninjutsu. Shadow binding technique, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow binding technique, Shadow imitation, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow neck binding technique, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow shuriken technique, D grade. Body replacement technique, E rank, general skill. Transmutation technique, E rank, general skill. Shadow clone technique, B rank, clone techniques. Clone technique, E rank, general skill. Invisibility cloak technique, E grade, general skill. Body blink technique, D grade, general skill. Guided shuriken technique, D rank, shuriken jutsu. 3 blades controlled windmill, C rank. Shuriken jutsu. Temporary paralysis technique, D grade. Underscore. Earth release, reverse coastal earth, C rank, earth release. Earth release, earth wall, B rank, earth release. Plus. Several techniques of earth release. Underscore. Fire release, great fireball technique, C rank, fire release. Further. Plus. Several general skills of E rank, release from ropes, illusions, etc. Standard skills based on a small amount of chakra. Taijutsu. Hurricane leaves, D rank. Shadow of the dancing leaf, S rank. Leaf style, basics, E rank. Leaf style, full, D rank. 10-finger piercing bullets, enhanced genome. Plus. A few standard academy moves that don't even qualify as E-rank techniques. Genjutsu. Illusion of white mist, D rank. Black enveloping mist of shadows, C rank. The fact that Shikamaru was only 5 years old was natural and not for long. He's having a birthday in just 22 days, so for now he's still a 5-year-old boy. Usually children are admitted to the academy at the age of 6, but if their birthday happens before winter, then they are admitted to the academy. If later, as in the case of Ji, who is already 6, then they go the next year. Of course, there may be different situations, and the child may go to the academy later than others or even earlier. Some clan ninjas may never visit the academy at all, but they may well get the rank of genin. True, this happens very rarely, yet even for clan descendants in the academy, you can learn and gain a lot. Friends, for example, or allies. Teamwork for Shinobi is a very important part of training. This is one of the reasons why Shikamaru has remained at the academy ever since. Although, in the past, there were clans that did not send children to the academy. But that was a very long time ago, even at the time of the birth of the academy as a whole. Further, the whole status has undergone significant changes. Even Shikamaru himself was surprised. He looked at it about 2 months ago, even before training with Avi and learning some of the techniques gathered in the clan. The changes have been significant, yet training with other people can help a lot. Also, a new pedigree was added with a nice bonus and the Sharingan status was changed. The power of elemental transformations also increased, especially Yang and Fire. As for the techniques, dozens of new ones have been added to the list. Basically, most of them Shikamaru studied in the library of Konoha, and as for the jutsu of the earth and the one and only fire technique, then it is worth thanks to the clan's library for that. There were several interesting jutsu not higher than C rank and even a couple of B rank, only Shikamaru decided not to teach the second because of poor compatibility with the element of water. The clan mainly kept the techniques of earth and water. Wind and fire were in the minority, and those that were too weak and useless. Shikamaru was not Orochimaru, obsessed with all the jutsu in the world. He wanted only useful ones in the future, and not everything. Although, if there was time, then he was ready to spend it on them. For the rest, he mastered a significant list of jutsu. He even managed to master Kimimru's technique through several attempts. But it was understandable. The technique is very simple, just shooting with bones from the fingers. Anyone could have learned this. Otherwise, he has not mastered anything else related to Shikatsu Myaku, except pulling out bones. He did not know how to perform famous dances, although he guessed about some. Just his memories of Kimimru's style were almost lost. Otherwise, the status has not changed much. Even some indicators have increased nothing at all. The same strength, for example, has grown noticeably slower lately, even thanks to Shikatsu Myaku. Shikamaru already had some thoughts and a better understanding of the three indicators: strength, endurance and speed. Strength, endurance and speed. Looking at it now, these are not just the usual stats that Shikamaru received standard information, along with the system. Now the guy began to understand more and more that the system is not an assistant to him in many ways and there are things that need to be studied by himself. These characteristics were one of those. Regarding these three indicators, everything turned out to be much more complicated, and the system just did not provide detailed information about this. There was not even a hint of physical energy and chakra, but this is reasonable. After all, this is the Shinobi world, where everything depends on the physical and spiritual energy that form the chakra, so it should be clear that simple strength and endurance mean little without physical energy. After all, they are to some extent her manifestation, at least in this Shinobi system. In fact, strength, speed and endurance just depend on that very physical energy. It, like spiritual energy, is stored in the entire body of a Shinobi and as such there is no special reserve for these energies. The reserve itself is the Shinobi. The combination of these types of energy is chakra. At least, so far, Shikamaru thinks, because he has not yet found a more sensible explanation. Of course, one should not confuse spiritual energy and yin chakra, which is the yin element, but at the same time is mixed with chakra, just in a certain proportion. This just confirms that improving the mastery of the elements of yin or yang does not give Shikamaru more chakra, but only enhances the transformation into these elements, making techniques stronger and more perfect. This can be confirmed by a simple example: the sage of the six paths. His transformation was so perfect that he could create life and breathe it into form. This is the highest transformation, to which Shikamaru, even with his 100% in the yin element, is still very far away. In addition, the guy had a suspicion that the sage's chakra itself was at a higher level, which just strengthened all his techniques, facilitated control and transformation. In general, the sage was just a terrifying genius with monstrous genetics, but, moreover, half human and at the same time different from his mother. Shikamaru had thoughts about this. He was more than sure that Zatsuki had some kind of problem and it was probably related to the development of chakra. Of course, everything could be wrong. Now it was difficult to judge such higher beings with this worthless experience. He just made assumptions based on the memories of this world. Even so, they were not always helpful, especially in teaching. Although they made me think. In general, any body is limited by genetics and physical shell. This is, perhaps, the natural fetters of any mortal. Shinobi can have a lot of chakra, but its amount directly depends on the body of the Shinobi and the lineage. Unfortunately, there are no other options. A kitten cannot have a lion, and a snake cannot have a dragon. Even Naruto's ravings about being a loser without talent is bullshit. Here you don't even need to include your brains in order to understand everything. These words of his in front of Neji's genius sound ridiculous. Unfortunately, this world is not a fairy tale and no matter how hard you train, you cannot achieve the same success that a monster like Naruto will not come out. Remembering this loser with the Baiju and Uzumaki genes, Shikamaru involuntarily crept out a grin. Everyone should be such losers. He did not think about Naruto for a long time and returned to his past thoughts. Shikamaru didn't quite understand how things worked in this system yet. But he knew for sure that the characteristics, strength, endurance and speed, in fact, depend on physical energy. All of these indicators are increased by training and increase physical energy. All this made me think about some situation with one Shinobi. Probably Rock Lee has just a problem with spiritual energy, or rather, with its combination with physical. He is simply not able to form chakra, but he can form physical energies as much as he can. This is evidenced by the fact that he is able to open 8 gates, special tanketsu in the body that control the correct chakra flows. But if you look at it now, they control not the flows of chakra, but rather the flows of 2 energies, spiritual and physical. So Rock Lee and Might Guy are using not exactly chakra as such, but both of these energies flowing through the system of channels. Those who create ninjutsu combine them into chakra. After all, if Lee could not form chakras, then what runs along his chakra channel system? So the chakra canals are actually channels that conduct 2 energies, but do not unite them. So basically, calling it a chakra channel system is a bit of a mistake. The chakra is already created by a person, but not by his body. This was the first thought that Shikamaru had come to before, but now he considered it nonsense, and quite funny nonsense. From a lack of knowledge about the tanka, he made many erroneous conclusions in the past. The bottom line was that any shinobi forms chakra. It was as important as blood and circulated in the same way throughout the body, nourishing all organs. The tanketsu regulated the flows, and the chakra itself was formed in the coils of the chakra canals. That's the whole channel system as a whole. It is very similar to the circulatory system and is no less important for the life of a shinobi. Therefore, Lee, of course, forms the chakra, otherwise he would simply die. Scratching his chin thoughtfully, Shikamaru muttered. Yes, I remember my thoughts about the yin and yang release, as I did not really distinguish them from spiritual and physical energy. If you think about it, now everything looks different. Lee's situation is even more curious, weak spiritual strength. If so. No, but, doesn't that mean he has very little chakra then? If so, how is he even able to open 8 gates, with a weak chakra? Nodding to his words, Shikamaru thought again. This is unlikely. It looks like Lee is simply unable to emit chakra from the body, but has a lot of it. Shaking his head, Shikamaru muttered. No, maybe this is not the point at all, but simply the banal control of the chakra and the inability to perform transformation. This is probably the point, because, apparently, he uses chakra quite well for taijutsu. In any case, I remember how he opened the gates in the anime and there was clearly visible bluish energy, and there it was usually represented as chakra. She was with green, which was portrayed as evaporating sweat. So he could probably release it, but he couldn't use it properly. This option is the most logical. It was not for nothing that I visited the library. Definitely, not for nothing. Thus, although Shikamaru is threatened with stronger techniques based on the yin element, in reality he will not have much chakra for this. So there is not so much benefit from this, but it naturally exists, where without it. Therefore, the indicator spiritual energy is not provided in the system. Although, it would not hurt, but 3 indicators, strength, speed and endurance simply show the amount of physical energy. Well, or its greater influence in specific areas of the body. After all, if you constantly train only strikes, it will increase your physical energy, but will it increase your speed? It is unlikely, because the legs simply cannot use this energy. In general, these 3 indicators reflect both the amount of physical energy to some extent, and the ability to use its shinobi, in certain areas. In physical strength, endurance and speed. Therefore, it is quite reasonable to simply designate physical energy as endurance, but this does not reflect all its capabilities and impact on the body. All these indicators together can be called general endurance, but they will not show details, but only the general endurance of all trained body parts, those parts that create this energy during their development, and those areas that can use it. Therefore, the amount of physical energy is also not very important without a developed body. And she simply cannot hold on to such a body and will destroy it. That is precisely what distinguishes it from the spiritual. But, it probably, in turn, in large quantities can affect the mind. Just mixing with chakra is just as important, because there is no genjutsu without at least a bit of chakra. In general, physical energy in the system was a manifestation of strength, endurance and speed, but it did not get its own indicator in the system that determines its amount. This is because it was much more reasonable to show the very development of the body, and not just its energy. At least that's what Shikamaru thought, because it was quite logical. Although without three characteristics, strength, endurance and speed, it was also possible to do without, simply replacing them with physical energy. But then I would have to add spiritual, which would result in two not very useful characteristics. They would not be as detailed and a little awkward to understand. Therefore, it is quite normal to just have chakra volume. It shows how many Shinobi are currently able to create and use it. To all this, it is also worth adding that both spiritual and physical energies in certain people can be stronger than in others, but at the same time, the amount of their chakra can be even less. For example, Chunnin by nature possessed powerful physical strength, but in fact, it did not depend on the amount of chakra, and all thanks to the genes of Uzumaki and Senju have more perfect physical energy. This is the whole secret of her enormous physical strength. After all, Chunnin, even without the enhanced power chakra, could break stones, thanks to what? That's right, physical energy. This is exactly what Sakura was different from her, because she did not have strong genetics, but achieved, one might say, everything with her talent for control. It is not clear where it came from, well, and probably with hard training, because breaking rocks only by strengthening your fists with chakra is not a very simple thing, otherwise every second ninja would repeat it. Probably, there was a requirement not only for control, but also for the body, which needed to be trained. This is what distinguishes the clan Shinobi from the simple ones. Those, even without straining, can do a lot, but simple children without a strong pedigree, unfortunately, must work hard. Shikamaru only chuckled a little at all this. His case was unique, and even very. That is why the indicators have been highlighted in the system. Physical energy influenced them in different ways and developed just the same training in taijutsu, which was many times more convenient. Since I'm thinking about taijutsu, it looks like it's worth finally finding Guy and gaining some confidence to get the 8 gates technique. He's kind of like a slightly crazy guy, but you can negotiate with him. I don't really want to spend points on this technique. And if we talk about special jutsu for strengthening the body for taijutsu, then you shouldn't forget about the 7 heavenly breaths. It would be interesting to see if it is possible to combine them. Otherwise, there are not so many taijutsu techniques in the system. Although, there is something similar, for example, the release of the battle chakra. This technique is quite curious and was not mentioned in the canon. If possible, I would also check it. It's just now, it's worth finally doing why I came here. Grinning, the guy returned to his main plan. He, as always, thought about unnecessary things and deviated from the topic. He was very much interested in the theory of this world, but there was enough time for practice. Shikamaru was only 6 years old, where's the hurry? Anyway, Shikamaru reached into his hip pocket and quickly pulled out a small black box. Opening it to the light, several square cells appeared, each of which contained a small ball. All of these were pills accumulated over time. Now Shikamaru decided to check all his rewards for completed tasks. By brushing aside Inuzuka's lineage, he got the following: 2 chakra recovery pill, pedigree stabilization pill, chakra storage expansion pill, the pedigree enhancement pill. All of these pills have been a huge accumulation of all time. Of course, there would be more of them, just a couple of them Shikamaru had already taken. For example, a pill of purification from toxins and a pill of purification of chakra channels. It helped raise the stats a bit for becoming a genin. As for the elixirs, there were few of them. A very unique one, which he received a long time ago, a special elixir of element enhancement. Well, a couple for one unremarkable quest, for which he received only 200 fate points. Elixir of strengthening muscles, elixir of strengthening bones. Shikamaru hasn't taken them yet, but left them for later. He was more interested in training, and he gave up for a while from strengthening elixirs, except that he left simple vitamins and supplements in food. Then there were the techniques, some of which he received quite recently, so Shikamaru decided right now and pick up the reward for the recent academy quest. Grimacing with a slight pain in his head, the guy immediately looked at the whole set of new techniques. Even those that she has not yet started. The oldest are the 3 Haijutsu of the Akimichi and Kurama clans. Which, of course, he could not start due to some restrictions. With no foundation, calorie control, Shikamaru had little chance of mastering other Akimichi techniques. Well, with Kurama everything was so clear. Shikamaru didn't really want to spend money on their genome. It was worth 10,000, and he had no particular idea about it. Further, S-rank living puppet Kinjutsu. He could not study it for natural reasons. Not only was he needed material for training, but also chakra with control, which was still lacking. So, further C-rank techniques. The summoning technique, which he was lucky to receive, as well as the techniques of random villages, for the next quest. Wind release, great gust. Fire release, dragon flame technique. Water release, grasping molasses field. In general, Shikamaru was not really sure that these were the techniques of other villages. In his opinion, such techniques were generally known in every village. In principle, it was logical, because this is not a ranker and not an S technique, but simply a C, so something that they know in other villages is not so surprising. True, Shikamaru was slightly upset with this set. The only thing that could have succumbed to him was the dragon fire technique. As for the rest, all this is very unlikely. Well, probably, and the wind also. It's just that the technique will be rather weak. Next came D-rank techniques. Fortunately, the system gave out yet unexplored techniques, which was definitely pleasing. Shikamaru did not believe in D-rank techniques at all, but there could be effective ones among them. This time there was, perhaps, only one. Earth release, double suicide decapitation technique. Although its usefulness was also worth thinking about. The others, however, could only laugh. Shikamaru didn't even expect them to appear here. Seduction, guy-on-guy technique. Demonic illusion, infernal vision technique. The set is so set. Although, Shikamaru was a little surprised. Still, Konohamaru still couldn't come up with this jutsu, and Shikamaru had already received it. This prompted curious thoughts. Well, as for the second technique, it was so-so. The illusion is too low rank, only against weak genin and is effective. Although Shikamaru did not expect more, it is still a D rank. Finally, there is something really interesting and so far impossible to master. The technique that the guy received together with the Sharingan, or rather as a reward, for the task of awakening him. Demonic illusion, stitching technique. Shikamaru remembered Itakai using it, so this technique wasn't that bad. Unfortunately, the requirements were quite high. A third tomo was needed, so Shikamaru couldn't use it yet. Although the technique made you think about many things, for example, how to create others with the Sharingan illusion. Shikamaru had only an instinctive understanding of these eyes before. He seemed to be able to apply genjutsu, he just did not really understand how to create a jutsu. Either way, Shikamaru was pleased. Such a number of techniques pleased, but most of all pleased another, the points of fate. This time, with all these tasks, Shikamaru really went far in just a couple of years. Of course, he was very far from the coveted power of Senju Hashirama. But on the other hand, he could now get the power of Uzumaki. It was not worth thinking about the extended genome, as well as about the second dojutsu. But, this time, Shikamaru was finally able to raise the power of other bloodlines. After all, how can 29,000 not be enough for all this? Plus, Shikamaru had some other plan to earn extra points. So Shikamaru decided to start with the foundation he had been striving for so long. Since there were many incomprehensible genealogies in the system, he temporarily did not touch them, although there were curious specimens with unique Kekii Genkai. Moreover, there were even those about which he read from the records in the library, about the disappeared clans. For example, the lineage of the Rinha clan with a special genome, or the genome of the Kato clan, which has long been extinct since the founding of the village. Kato had a unique trait that allowed them to master all 5 elements from birth. And that was only a small part of the special genomes in the system. There were no less than a dozen dojutsu. But, Shikamaru decided to choose what he at least knew and understood from memories. It was not yet time to take risks. Still, the system did not give such detailed information, but simply the main advantages of the pedigree, but not any disadvantages. There was no word about the same problem of awakening the Sharingan in the system. If Shikamaru's ignorance about this, it would definitely be more difficult. So the first thing he chose was of course the Uzumaki bloodline. It was very useful, both now and in the future. After choosing the desired pedigree in the system, then everything happened as usual. The glasses were deducted and a strange power flowed into Shikamaru's body. As soon as this happened, a long and difficult pain followed again. The process took several hours, and this time the guy lost consciousness again. The pain of accepting the Uzumaki bloodline was far greater than he initially thought. But, this was already familiar, so he quickly finished with it, ceasing to pay attention to such disadvantages of the new strength. Rising out of the mud and slimy liquid, Shikamaru quickly washed in the river and came ashore. It was very helpful that the Neikar River passed around the village, and the Uzumaki clan was quite close to it, although they had to walk a little to the very edge of the sensitive barrier. After finishing with Uzumaki's power, Shikamaru proceeded to the next part of the plan. He didn't want to focus much on this. If the hair hasn't changed color, he was already happy with it. He could not even imagine himself being red-haired. Crouching on the beach, Shikamaru placed a small bag in front of him and pulled out several bottles of liquid. Special elixir of element enhancement. Elixir of muscle strengthening. Elixir of bone strengthening. The 2 elixirs of fortification were a dark green liquid in small transparent bottles, and the elixir of reinforcement had a cloudy dark purple hue. Without worrying about anything, Shikamaru quickly drank the fortification elixirs one by one. 10 minutes later, having finished their slightly unpleasant assimilation, he proceeded to the elixir of amplification. This elixir was called special for a reason. Its unique feature was precisely in the strengthening of 5 elements: fire, water, wind, earth, lightning. Unfortunately, the elements yin and yang were not included in this list, as there was another special elixir for them. Besides, the elixir would be useless after 100% compatibility with the element. Although Shikamaru has surpassed this limit due to his pedigree, in fact, he still would not have been able to show a transformation above 100% due to body limitations. Of course, this was fixable by other special abilities that he did not yet have. In any case, Shikamaru hasn't decided to start taking this elixir yet. He only put it aside temporarily. In fact, he had to increase all the indicators of the elements by as much as 5%, which would help him complete one task to master the 5 elements. Of course, there was not much difference, the percentages will probably be the same. But, Shikamaru decided to strengthen the bloodlines first. Therefore, he took out a box of pills and quickly accepted one of them, the bloodline enhancement pill. For a long time he did not use them, but since there was one available, it was worth using it. After selecting the Uchiha bloodline in the system, all the properties of the pill immediately began to apply to the power of the Uchiha blood. This moment was worth considering. This time everything went much easier than in the past, so Shikamaru quickly began to get rid of another pill, the chakra storage expansion pill. Once the opportunity arose, Shikamaru decided to accept it as well. Already from receiving the Uzumaki pedigree, he felt a noticeable increase in reserves. This pill should also significantly raise them. As soon as the pill was taken, Shikamaru immediately felt a slight surge of energy and a rather unpleasant sensation through all chakra channels. But it did not last long. All that is left is a feeling of slight weakness, after all these enhancements. The storage was obviously increased, but the chakras were still the same as before. Setting aside the remaining pills, Shikamaru took only the chakra replenishment pill and quickly felt a surge of energy. There was only one such left, the other he left for later. As for the stabilization pill, its time will come. He planned to give it to someone, since he could not use it himself, so for now he kept it with himself. All that remains now is to strengthen the existing bloodlines and check the notifications. Glancing back at the system again, Shikamaru immediately noticed the task completion message. Accumulation. Spend 100,000 destiny points. Reward, chakra storage expansion pill and lost class S jutsu. As soon as Shikamaru saw this assignment, he only sighed and shook his head. What a scam. Well, even though they didn't give me glasses and that's good, I feel uneasy for all these advantages. Pulling out a pack of cigarettes, Shikamaru immediately lit a cigarette. He was already a little sick from all this. Of course, he was pleased, it just felt strange. Okay, since there is still a pill. Shikamaru immediately took the reward for this task. Quickly digesting a rather difficult technique, the guy threw a round black ball into his mouth and swallowed. The effect was exactly the same as the last time, slightly unpleasant, but bearable. The volume of the chakra immediately noticeably changed. Shikamaru directly felt that after all these enhancements, he was not far from Chunnin's chakra volume at all. Hua. Well, the easy part is over. Breathing out smoke, Shikamaru rubbed his eyes and tuned into the hardest part. He already knew that a new assignment had been issued, but for now he decided to deal with all this. His thoughts were already a little confused, so he quickly wanted to finish what he had come for. Waste was next in line, so the guy immediately opened exchange and with the remaining 9,000 points bought what he had hoped for from the very beginning. He had plans to complete one task and therefore simply buying pills was not particularly profitable. But he had enough money for a couple. Having bought 2 pills, there were only 5,200 points left. Further, everything was as planned. Shikamaru decided to buy another bloodline. But, to the guy's surprise, he simply could not do it. The only thing the system reported was a simple message. Limit of possible user pedigrees has been reached. After that, even the weakest pedigrees turned red and became inactive, and the possibility of buying them was closed. Shikamaru could not have expected such a situation. Glancing over the completely closed list of desired powers, Shikamaru could only grin wryly. Damn it, something like that was to be expected. If only there was a warning, now I really hit it in full. With a sigh, Shikamaru returned to the system. There seemed to be messages. Opening the list of recent notifications, Shikamaru quickly scanned them. Completed tasks. Blood limit. Get the maximum possible pedigrees. At the moment, 5. Reward, 1,000 points, bloodline stabilization pill. Noticing this task, Shikamaru did not hesitate to take the reward. As soon as this happened, he immediately received some important information from the system. It turned out that in fact, there were limitations from the very beginning, he just did not notice them. Everything was extremely simple. By nature he could own only 5 bloodlines for up to 10 years. After 10, the list could be replenished with 2 more, after 5 more, 2 again. Ultimately, the limit will be 25 years, where after 20 there will be only 1 pedigree available, the 12th. Now Shikamaru began to understand why the assignment was for 12 bloodlines. The power of the bloodline. Increase 12 pedigrees, up to 440%. Reward, hidden. The picture was now coming together. The system was not so simple and did not warn about many things at all, such as such. Fortunately, 12 genealogies were not redistributed. It turned out that what seemed like a useless gene expansion pill was now quite useful. But its price bites noticeably. To shell out as many as 5,000 points is a pretty costly advantage per pill. For such a price, one could quite take the Akimichi lineage that Shikamaru had counted on and increase the young release conversion to 50%. He had this calculation. Now, everything has changed. Although he received 1,000 points for the task, it did not brighten up the situation at all. Now Shikamaru only had 6,200 points. Taking a gene expansion pill is pointless, because there will not be enough points for a pedigree, and you cannot take a pedigree without it. Simply put, this is a dead end. The good news is that the expansion pill would not affect the usual obtaining of available pedigree slots. Simply put, by taking the pill, Shikamaru will receive a bloodline slot, but this will not affect the receipt of this slot after reaching 10 and so on. Further in the notifications surfaced. New tasks. Breaking the shackles. Remove restrictions on the ownership of pedigrees. Spirit. Spend 500,000 destiny points. Own blood. Combine 2 or more pedigrees. More power. Get 15 different pedigrees. The list was replenished with good tasks, but their implementation was one more difficult than the other. In any case, Shikamaru ignored it and started thinking about another plan. So, in my hands I have 2 pills of enhancement and 6,200 points. It is worth thinking. Gloomily closing his eyes, Shikamaru began to sort out options. Master the techniques. Get 3 dojutsu. Dojutsu. After a couple of minutes, he finally opened his eyes. Wait. I felt a strange effect on my eyes, increasing the blood of the Uchiha. It may not be strong, but it did affect my Sharingan. What if? Glancing at a couple of pills, Shikamaru did not hesitate to put 2 in his mouth at once. He knew it would hurt, but certainly not as much as before. He had an idea, so he acted on impulse. After about an hour of difficult enduring pain, the guy finally opened his tired eyes and exhaled longly. I feel. It worked. Focusing his gaze, Shikamaru's eyes instantly gleamed with bloody light and changed. The Sharingan was activated, and this time it was noticeably different from the previous one. Instead of the previous 2 tomo, another one appeared. The Sharingan was now fully completed. Looking at his reflection in the water, Shikamaru smiled slightly. Even without looking, I already feel the changes. It's a pity that this is my limit. Sighing, the guy immediately returned his eyes to normal. He wanted to see if he could help the eyes to awaken their full form by leveraging the pedigree, and it worked. Unfortunately, this is the maximum he could achieve. The blood of the Uchiha will not help much in the Sharingan's strength, but rather the increase in her strength somehow pushed her to develop her eyes, which was helpful. But even so, with 6,000 fate points, thinking about Mangekyou is pointless. An improved emotional outburst pill costs 10,000. This was not what Shikamaru could count on now. Plus, those eyes won't be that much needed anytime soon. Even with glasses, Shikamaru would not have spent it. Well, 2 elements have exceeded 50%, I am halfway from completing the task on the elements. Unfortunately, this is not enough. Frowning, Shikamaru returned to the notifications again, as more recently appeared while he was digesting the pills. Genius. Achieve a 200-point talent. Reward, 3,000 points, bloodline stabilization pill. As soon as Shikamaru saw this, he immediately changed in his face. Well, you're left. Here. Spitting displeasedly, the guy quickly lit another cigarette, and then calmed down slightly, exhaled the smoke with relief. I just have no words. For some nonsense I get 5,000, but here there are only 3. This is on purpose, not otherwise. Only 800 points are not enough to 10,000. And again, this stabilization pill, well, a joke. And where did this task come from? He was not on the list at all. Today is definitely not my day. The system has shown itself in all its glory. It was definitely a deliberate blow. Displeased, smoking a cigarette, Shikamaru continued to examine the notices. New task. The control. Reach at least 150 control points. Force. Reach 250 power points. Endurance. Reach 300 stamina points. Speed. Reach 250 speed points. Terrifying talent. Reach 400 talent points. Huge stock. Reach a chakra volume of at least 5,000. Evolution of the eyes. Achieve 1 dojutsu evolution. Looking through this rather voluminous list, Shikamaru finally began to understand something. The system has probably somehow been updated, after spending hundreds of thousands of fate points. She seemed to have moved to a new level and issued new tasks. I wonder, since Shikamaru did not receive information about this, he decided to check the status and make sure of something. Name, Shikamaru Nara. Age, 5 years old. Faction, Nara Clan, Hidden Leaf Village. Ninja rank, Chunnin. Strength, 108, Stamina, 123, Speed, 103. Talent, 225, Chakra size, 1235, Chakra control, 82. Pedigree. Nara, strength 425%, improved mastery of the element yin, 85%. Improved genome, absent. Kaguya, 50% strength, unique body +5 to indicators, strength, endurance and speed. Improved genome, Shikatsu. Evolution, absent. Uchiha, power 400%, improved mastery of the element fire, 80%. Improved genome, Sharingan, completed. Evolution, absent. Inuzuka, 50% strength, upgrades of all senses +5 speed. Improved genome, absent. Uzumaki, 50% strength, improvements in control and chakra volume. +5 to control, +200 to chakra volume. Improving vitality and disposition to fuinjutsu. +5 to stamina. Elements. Wind release 3%. Earth release 36%. Fire release 107%. Yin release 116%. Yang release 18%. Technique. Ninjutsu. Shadow binding technique, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow binding technique, Shadow imitation, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow neck binding technique, Haijutsu, Yin release. Shadow shuriken technique, degrade. Body replacement technique, E rank, general skill. Transmutation technique, E rank, general skill. Shadow clone technique, B rank, clone techniques. Clone technique, E rank, general skill. Body blink technique, D grade, general skill. Guided shuriken technique, D rank, shuriken jutsu. 3 blades controlled windmill, C rank, shuriken jutsu. Temporary paralysis technique, D grade. Earth release, reverse coastal earth, C rank, earth release. Earth release, earth wall, B rank, earth release. Plus. Several techniques of earth release. Fire release, great fireball technique, C rank, fire release. Further. Plus. Several general skills of E rank, release from ropes, illusions, etc. Standard skills based on a small amount of chakra. Taijutsu. Hurricane leaves, D rank. Shadow of the dancing leaf, S rank. Leaf style, basics, E rank. Leaf style, full, D rank. Genjutsu. Illusion of white mist, D rank. Black enveloping mist of shadows, C rank. As soon as Shikamaru looked over the status, he finally realized that there really was a change. Not with his performance, which he was of course pleased with, but with the status itself. At first glance, everything is imperceptible, but unlike the last time, now Shikamaru had more opportunities. Now he himself could decide which indicator to remove and which to leave. This made everything much easier, because a huge list of hundreds of techniques will definitely get in the way in the future. So Shikamaru could hide him or remove him altogether. And it would be possible to simply hide weak E-rank techniques or, in general, a technique to choose from. Which, of course, was very helpful. Returning to the functions of the system, Shikamaru no longer noticed any obvious changes, everything seemed to be the same. Except for one more task. Heritage. Help the Uzumaki clan revive or destroy her remains. Reward, hidden. Probably the resulting pedigree somehow affected this. This was not surprising, because unlike the rest of the bloodlines Shikamaru was lying around, only the Uzumaki were almost extinct. Well, interesting of course, it's just that it's not that important right now. Shikamaru quickly closed the notifications and rubbed his whiskey in displeasure. He was not at all happy with this list of tasks, and before that he was not small. Like creating special techniques or helping the clan become noble, and what is even more difficult, becoming a Hokage. The list was very voluminous and there will be enough cases for years to come. It's just that now he was more interested in the present and the corresponding task. Okay. Since I have only 9,000, I still could not really choose a normal pedigree. Enough of these, not for nothing that restrictions have appeared. So a lot of luck on my head, so some cons appeared. Why bother? After all, my stats have grown enough to complete the task on the way of Taijutsu, and there with the received reward and the new pedigree it will be not far away. On these thoughts, Shikamaru quickly gathered himself and slowly walked to the Uzumaki barrier. He had an idea and he wanted to test it. I need to chat with Guy or have to buy the 8 gates myself. I need these points for the task, and on them I can easily get the power of the Yuuki clan. For example, their compatibility with the elements of water and wind is amazing. Although, I think that the glasses will not be enough. Yes, and probably should take something else. Sighing, Shikamaru finally approached the barrier surrounding the territory of Uzumaki. Not long ago, Shikamaru found this place in hopes of gaining some benefits. He remembered some of the original history, so it was worth visiting. Although Shikamaru guessed about the protection system, he just decided to check. Everything turned out as he thought. The area is under the barrier, and the key is probably only the Hokage has. Of course the key is, it says loudly. The barrier is hardly terribly strong, rather it is just that such crooks with the power of Chunnin are simply not able to get through it. There is also a possibility that this only applies to other Shinobi, not Uzumaki. Although Shikamaru was more inclined towards both options, Sasuke had already penetrated here, as had Orochimaru. It's just that both had a special situation. The first had Uzumaki Karen in his companions, and the second was Orochimaru. This, perhaps, can explain a lot. That snake was capable of many things and was definitely capable of opening some simple barrier. There was little information about the barriers in the Konoha library, so Shikamaru was completely illiterate in this section. Why, there weren't even Fuinjutsu standards in the library. So Shikamaru was not yet aware of the unsealing and sealing on the scrolls. All he knew about it was the summoning technique received as a reward for the quest. Otherwise, he was a complete layman. In any case, he would have been very happy to learn more and had high expectations for the interior beyond the barrier. Uzumaki had 2 lands in Konoha, one almost in the center of the village and the other on the outskirts. It was on this very outskirts, a few hundred meters away, that the Nine Tails once raged. As for the dwellings of Kushina and the 4th, it was not difficult to find a place. Who in the village doesn't know where the Hokage lived? It was he who lived in the very central territory of Uzumaki with Kushina. It was a fairly large residence, which is currently closed and no one, apparently, owns it. As for this land surrounded by a barrier, there is little information about it. but the main thing that Shikamaru managed to learn is about her purpose. In fact, everything was quite simple. This area still belonged to the old branch of Uzumaki when the village was founded. Just after a while, they left this place and went to the main clan in the country of the whirlpools. The story is old and there is little information about it. But, from Shikamaru's understanding, everything was extremely simple. Senju and Uzumaki are longtime allies and have probably got married and stuff like that on more than one occasion. And the Uzumaki clan is most likely an offshoot of the same Senju from ancient times even before the founding of the villages. Old friends helped in the beginning of the founding of the village, and then returned to their village. Maybe it was like that. Shikamaru did not attach any importance to this. After all, there was something curious about it, namely Mito Uzumaki. Unlike Kushina, Mito lived here, behind this barrier, and this is evidenced by a well-preserved residence with several small houses nearby. True, it is no longer very well groomed, but this place definitely looks better than all the other ruins. Temples and houses far from this residence looked one worse than the other. But, the residence looked almost perfect. It was in her that Shikamaru was interested. After all, in such a place something worthwhile could have survived, and not just some kind of mask of the god of death, but something more valuable. And since the masks have not yet been plundered, it means that strangers definitely do not enter the territory. It is possible that much could remain. True, there was a possibility that the barrier could be a signal and one wrong move and Shikamaru would be detected. It may not be so simple. The third Hokage was not a fool, that's for sure. Either way, he wanted to be sure. It was easy to understand that this barrier was certainly not super strong, because there would not be much sense in this, since the treasures of the entire village are not stored here. And maintaining such a barrier was not an easy task. So the Joinins could easily pass, but there was also hope for the Uzumaki's blood. Shikamaru, on the other hand, did not quite possess their blood, but rather his own blood acquired some kind of kinship with them. Although, he himself was not sure how these bloodlines from the system worked. But, a check would not hurt, that's for sure. Thinking about different things, Shikamaru finally got close to the barrier. It was almost impossible to notice, but Shikamaru had already checked where it ended more than once, so it was already easier. Coming up close, the guy, without even hesitation, decided to quickly make sure of everything. To his luck, the hand passed without any resistance. The barrier was almost not felt, except that it gave a slight resistance, almost imperceptible. But, there was no time to be distracted by these sensations. Shikamaru was a little exhausted, so he decided to quickly end here and come back later. He was most interested in the main residence that he wanted to access. Therefore, with a quick step he headed towards the goal. As soon as Shikamaru got close to the main residence, a hoarse voice called out to him. "I would not advise." This voice was as if right above his ear. Shikamaru was struck by lightning. He stopped abruptly and grabbed a kunai and turned in a jump. But the expected attack did not come. All Shikamaru saw was the grinning old man. And a very familiar old man. "Old man, you." Shikamaru did not have time to finish, as he was interrupted by the interlocutor. "Curious. How did you get through the barrier?" Although Raizeenn squinted at the guy and nodded. "You have become stronger again, commendable. But, did you break through by force?" Shikamaru finally exhaled and removed the kunai. "I don't know how it happened, I just went through it." Raizeenn raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "Dodging again?" "You don't have to say, this is your business, I understand. Well, you should know that the anew informed me long ago about your visit to this place. Noticing Shikamaru's frown, Raizeenn waved his hand and came closer. Don't worry so much, I asked them not to interfere with your training and not even come up 100 meters. Even they shouldn't see your features. Stopping next to Shikamaru, Raizeenn calmly looked at the two-story building in front of him and sighed. Unfortunately, because of this, I cannot send the anew to watch over you. Shikamaru also turned around and looked at the building seriously. The guy's height was almost half that of the old man, but his look was no less serious. You don't trust your anew so much. Well, that's not the point, there are just things that you shouldn't say even to those you trust, for their own good. Your abilities are exactly what superfluous minds should not know. At the old man's words, Shikamaru smiled slightly. I understand what you mean. It's good. And for sure there are things that even I do not know yet. With a slight grin at Shikamaru, Raizeenn said. I hope this is really for the good. Well, as for the barrier. Walking around the area, the old man grinned. This barrier was installed by the fourth Hokage, and the one in front of you. Nodding towards the residence, Raizeenn said. This one was installed by Kushina Uzumaki. And why are you telling me about this? Shikamaru asked in surprise. It's simple. The old man chuckled and turned to the guy. You are very smart for your age, very strong, but all this can make you, how to say it? Become an arrogant bastard. Shikamaru asked with a grin. Not that I wanted to say that, but you think correctly. You see, my last student. In general, I would really not want you to go the same way. Are you talking about Orochimaru? Raizeenn dropped his eyes and sighed longly. About him. After a little pause, Raizeenn smiled again. Well, as you should have understood, I'm going to look after you and teach you if possible. Your abilities are worth developing, and sitting in the forest, you miss a lot. I didn't plan it, but your case is unique, so. Shikamaru tilted his head slightly and raised his eyebrows. Wait. Are you suggesting that I become your student? The old man sighed again and smiled. Yes. I suppose so. Do you agree? Shikamaru thought a little. This is a good opportunity. Probably I should agree, because I won't lose anything. Nodding to his thoughts, Shikamaru looked at the old man. I agree. That is. Bowing slightly, Shikamaru expressed his respect. Sensei agree. Raizeenn smiled and patted the guy on the shoulder. Good, very good. Well, now I have to leave. I came to warn you not to try to get through this barrier. I have no key, and it will be very difficult to break through by force. The protection is probably tied to the pedigree. Only a relative of Kushina can go here. Even if you were able to bypass the outer barrier, this one definitely cannot. Outer skips anyone above the rank of Chunnin or those with Uzumaki bloodlines. Actually, he is something like a weaker version of what is in front of you. Although, as you went through it, it prompts different thoughts. Shikamaru scowled at the Fuin seals around the house and asked. But you're Hokage, why don't you have access? Don't you want to see what's inside? Raizeenn smiled wryly and nodded. I would like to. But, I promised to keep this place for someone. Only he can get in here, the intruder will face a painful recoil. I see. With a sigh, Shikamaru nodded and bowed slightly, clenching his fist. Then I'll go, teacher. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. With a short nod, Raizeenn immediately disappeared, leaving Shikamaru alone. Looking at the spot where the Hokage had just stood, Shikamaru chuckled inwardly. Teacher means. Who would have thought? Shifting his gaze back to the Uzumaki residence, Shikamaru decided to take a chance and check. Maybe the barrier will not let him through, but at least it will make sure for sure. As soon as Shikamaru touched the subtle matter, a shock went through his body. Just a moment and Shikamaru flew off to the side, rolling through the mud. Observing from the side, Raizeenn just chuckled and finally really left this place. As soon as Shikamaru got up, he just shook his head and began to shake off pieces of dirt. What an interesting barrier. The guy was pretty much electric shock and at the same time was thrown by the shock wave. The sensations were very unpleasant, but quite bearable. The barrier was not trying to kill, but rather a warning against trying to cross it. Probably even an ordinary person would not suffer much from the recoil. Several fractures and loss of consciousness at most. Shikamaru recovered easily and quickly got rid of the mud and headed home. He wanted to take a quick break and then start his training with a new teacher. And it was very interesting to visit the archive in the Hokage residence. By the way, now I can create some shadow clones. This pleases. Now everything will become even more interesting. It is also worth going to, guys. He often visits my restaurant, so it will not be difficult to find him. 8 gates, I would rather get them. Grinning, Shikamaru left the barrier and walked slowly home along the rocky road against the background of sunset. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also make sure you tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.